So, Dave Holland, welcome to the Disenfranchised. How are you doing today?
Extremely well, thank you. Apart from very wet and soggy France, but apart from that, all is good, thanks.
Fantastic. I mean, it's pretty much the same weather as here, isn't it? Or you're a bit further south?
We're a bit further south. We're about, on the map, we're about an inch south of Luxembourg. So we're a bit further south, but we're right on the German border. So we get the Russian weather, the English weather, we get all sorts here. But at the moment, we've got the English rain at the moment, I think.
Yeah, well, it's just stopped raining here, luckily enough for me. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have summer soon. I don't know when, but
Exactly. Keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, Dave, let's get started by finding out in your career, what was your first job?
First job, and my first ever job was actually working in the family business. My mum and dad we had shops, green grocery business in and around Birmingham. So my first ever job was really stacking fruit, apples, and sweeping up and making the tea in the shops. That was every Saturday. Anybody who's got parents with a retail business. So that was my first job from the age of about. There's photographs of me at age 5 or 6, doing the sweeping up and doing that sort of thing. That was my first job in the family business. But my first, I suppose, other job was actually my apprenticeship. I did my first apprenticeship when I was just 16, left home, went down to London, and I did a mechanical and production engineering apprenticeship. So I'm an engineer by background. So my first proper job, I suppose, where somebody else paid, or at least somebody paid me. My dad never did. That was all to do with the apprenticeship and the engineering. So you said the wind's picked up and blowing the curtains around here now as well. So but yeah, so the engineering apprenticeship was the first proper job, really.
Perfect. And was that a career that kind of you fell into, or was that something that you'd always wanted to do from a young age?
I purely fell into it because I think I was in Birmingham at the time, just outside Birmingham. This is 1978, 1979. And this was the industrial wasteland of the West Midlands back then. There was no work available, particularly either join the army or go down the pit. That was basically the options I had. And so I think I cut out a coupon in one of the papers for a Ministry of Defence training scheme. No idea what it was. And went down for the interview, and they offered me a place. So I left home, went down to London to do this engineering apprenticeship, but it was purely by chance. I mean, I loved it. Happily, I took to it. I became a qualified engineer, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't really by design. I had to get out of the West Midlands, out of Birmingham, because the options there were pretty thin back then. So I sort of fell into it, but it worked out okay. Yeah, it was all right.
Oh, cool. So how long did you stay within the engineering world for then?
It was 4-year apprenticeship. I did 2 years after as well. So I became a qualified professional and technology officer, I think it was a term back then. And my speciality then was sniper rifles, assault weapons, and cannon, tornado cannon, all this sort of thing. But when I left there to come back up to the Birmingham to get married, there's not a lot of jobs around for weapons engineers in Birmingham. I went down to Parker Hale. I think they were in Birmingham back then. Had a chat with them. There's nothing going on. So I left that and went into sort of industry then, which was logistics and packaging and military subcontracting, but it wasn't really engineering as I called it. So I did 6 years as an engineer, then into logistics, transport, distribution, warehousing, back into the service sector after that.
Wow, it's a really interesting industry to be in, I should imagine, and the technology and the capabilities of weaponry advanced quite a lot over the years, obviously, and
yeah, since I was doing it, it's advanced a lot more since I would have thought as well. But it was a fascinating subject to be involved with on a daily basis. On my desk, I would have a GPMG, a 7.62mm GPMG, or a sniper rifle, as we were developing the jigs and fixtures and tools and developing that sort of thing. So I was literally handling guns every day and firing on the ranges. We took it all for granted. But then it sort of sinks in a little bit. We're doing all this development work to actually, and it wasn't to actually kill people. This is the tragedy of it. It was more to wound and hurt and harm them. So it takes more people to pick them up off the battlefield and treat them than it does to bury them. If that makes sense. There's economics to all this sort of thing as well, which when you're doing it, it just makes perfect sense. Of course, we're going to do that. But when you know, in hindsight, you think, oh crikey, it's not the most. Somebody's got to do it. I'm pleased people are doing it. We need these things to be happening on our behalf in our defence, but it's not a sort of industry I wanted to be in long term. That wasn't really the lifetime plan.
Yeah, I can imagine it's not the ideal kind of outcome for the work that you're doing, but fascinating all at the same time. So
Oh, absolutely, it was great. I loved it.
yeah, I mean, I could talk to you about it for ages, because I'm really fascinated by things like the World War II and stuff like that. But
Okay.
I won't
Well,
go
quick
down
tip,
that road today.
if you hear a gunshot, you're okay. But I'll just leave that with you. So don't be scared of gunfire. It's the ones you don't hear. Those ones you're really scared of.
They're the ones to be worried about. Fair enough. I'll take that on board. Perfect. So sort of where did your career go from then? What were you ideally looking to transition into?
It was, I didn't know at the time. I had no idea really. I knew I couldn't afford to live in London because the property prices were so expensive even then. So came back to Birmingham. I was working over in Dudley in just outside Birmingham. Got married. Lynn and I have been together since we were 15 anyway. So got married, and I was very fortunate again, but this has been a pattern in my sort of career, I suppose. The company I worked for were a military subcontracting logistics company, and they were quoting or tendering the MOD for a spares contract on the weapon systems that I'd been involved with down in London. So I was very attractive to them as an employee. And when, at the interview, I said to them, look, you're not going to get this contract because they're never going to give it out to commercial business. But anyway, they hired me anyway. We didn't get the contract, but they kept me on. And I was trained, and I'm very fortunate. They were a private company with businesses all over the UK. And I went through the technical side, the quality insurance side into operations. And then I would go to, run or shut or close or whatever it was, a struggling business in the group somewhere. They dropped me into it to go and sort it out. So I think I did about 9 locations. I worked in Manchester and Peterborough, Milton Keynes, all over the UK, sorting these companies out, which was great. I mean, we salvaged. I think I lost one, won 8, lost one. I think was my sort of record, if you like. But I learned then about not just operations management, but all about more about business and sales and balance sheets and leadership. I was only a kid, only mid-20s at the time, really. But that was when I cut my teeth on operations and business and got to love the game of the game of business, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. And were you involved in kind of the operational efficiency side of things at all?
Absolutely, yeah. We were a manufacturing company, manufacturing subcontracting. So we would be doing warehousing, distribution, logistics, manufacturing, and efficiency, or GP contribution. It's the name of the game. If you're in the manufacturing sector, it's all about GP. You've got to get that GP up. So we were looking at manufacturing techniques and processes and procedures and skills and measuring everything. Because our clients, the people we're working with were, for example, British Aerospace up in Chatterton in Manchester, for example. So we had to hit these deadlines, and we couldn't say, sorry, we're late, or the quality's not right. These we're dealing with military aircraft. We have to be correct first time, every time, keep the quality and keep the efficiency at the same time. So it was challenging, but again, another fabulous business to be involved with.
Yeah, it's really interesting because these businesses, the people that are actually involved in actually producing the product or manufacturing or whatever it may be is their part of their role. They're kind of
exactly
a little bit kind of narrow in their vision, aren't they? So somebody like yourself who sort of steps in and has a different set of eyes on the situation can start to spot those opportunities for efficiencies or to have better processes in place anyway. So yeah, it's really interesting.
I think so. Topic. And I think going around the group, being sort of parachute as the operations manager to sort the things out, always a fresh approach. Because it's like when somebody walks into your house. We were talking offline about this being a renovation place. I'm dreading when we can have people around, because I think we've done a great job of the decoration, and they're going to go, "What's the matter with that switch over there?" or "Why is that down there?" Or they're going to see. So anybody can walk into a business as they can walk into your kitchen or your bathroom and spot things, and I could do that easily. So it's not an easy job, but looking at a company and going, well, that's not right, that can be improved, because people get used to the habits, they get used to bad habits as well, and a fresh pair of eyes can be really helpful. So the job I did, it wasn't really hard. Spotting an opportunity in the company to improve it, it's pretty straightforward if you ask the right questions. That was all.
Yeah, sure. So, sort of moving forwards into your in your career, then you started to take up general manager roles. Is that correct?
Yeah,
What,
yeah. I started to go
what was that
higher
like?
up the food chain. Well, I think that the biggest challenge, I think, and people with teams working with them and for them will recognise this, that everybody says that people are the best asset in the business, and they absolutely are. But they can also be your biggest headache as well if you're not careful. They just can. People can be challenging because you're dealing with personalities and all sort of things. So I enjoyed working with people, but it was also the side of the role I didn't enjoy the most. I wasn't really, I couldn't get involved with all the drama. I wanted to get things done. My pace is a bit quicker than maybe some people can move at. But I went into general management and I left the logistics industry and the military subcontracting industry. And I wanted to change. I thought, well, I've spent 10, 12 years doing this sort of thing. What can I do different? So Lynn, my wife, she sent up a coupon out of I think that was a Sunday Times. I think it was, anyway. And it was to be an operations manager of this company in London. Turns out they were a dressmaking company and they make dresses for professional and amateur ballroom dancers. So the ball gowns, Latin American, this sort of thing. So I went up there for the interview. I thought I'd go for it anyway. And there's a full day, like a board of interviews going on. And there's me, there's a couple of guys there, a couple of gals there from the West End or the theatre or the Royal Ballet, Savile Row, all very, very experienced in terms of design and fabrics and this sort of thing. And they asked us what our the last project was that we were been working on. And these were going through, they were working on Phantom of the Opera or Cats or some bizarre thing. And they came to me, and my last project was a shipping container for a spare periscope for the Trident nuclear submarine program, which has nothing to do with fabrics and dresses. So I left there thinking I got no chance of getting the job. It was just ridiculous. I was so far out of my comfort zone. But they phoned that night, and I went back in the morning, back up to London again. I was in Southampton at the time, and they offered me the job. So I went into the dance. It's called dance sport, and that was polar opposite. One day working with the military on a container for a periscope for a Trident submarine. The next day working with the world champion ballroom dancer, talking about colours and fabrics and style cues for their next competition. But what I learned was it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's different people, different standards and expectations. But you boil it all the way down, it's the same type of thing. It's business, it's people, it's sales, it's efficiency, it's relationships. And that taught me that I could do that in the military context, and then in the dress context. If I could do that, I could probably do just about anything pretty much. So I think that it taught me a lesson, a very positive lesson, and they were great. They were great people. Still in touch with them now. The owners are in Austria. Still in touch with them now. We have friends over the years, but it was a fabulous time. They were there for about 4 or 5 years, I think it was, and it was really, really exciting. But that was my switch from military to dressmaking. So it was a bit of a shift.
It's interesting, but I think if you've got the right communication skills and the right people call them soft skills, don't they? The ability to communicate, the ability to influence others, those kinds of things. I think they're much more important to look for when people are recruiting for staff than the actual, what industry have they come from. So it's no surprise that you've managed to transfer across successfully into another industry to me, but it is surprising that the dress industry took somebody from the military industry.
It was a bit odd, and I said to them on day one, but before I accepted the job, I said, "Look, why the heck do you want me of all the people that were there?" And the guy said that they use a headhunter recruiter to find people. He said, "Well, we're looking for somebody who doesn't think like they think. We've got lots of dancers, lots of creatives, lots of people in there that think that way. You don't, and you'll add a real different approach to it," which was absolutely true. So I was quite irritating to them, I think, when I first started, because I was looking at things that, as you said, looking at things like, well, efficiency and added value per hour and all this sort of thing, which was a no-go area to a certain extent. But between us, we've got a happy balance, and the business did really well. It grew, and I had a great time there. But it's all about people, whether they're frustrating or not or otherwise. If you can, I think, engage and inspire and lead and be part of a team and be good with people, you're 90% of the way there in just about any sector, I would have thought.
Yeah. Okay. So, seen on your LinkedIn profile, then next up was Aer Lingus, wasn't it? And
Yes.
again, another different industry, but I guess it ties in a little bit more to that kind of military side. But that you were there for a short time, weren't you? And it looks like you then started your own business. So, could you tell us a little bit about that business that you started up and why you did it?
Well, I went to Links. I was approached. I did a master's degree and my MBA at night school, and the CEO of this division of Aer Lingus was on the course, and I went to work with them. That was a running Heathrow, Gatwick, and Stansted with them, and then we sold that to Swissport, the ground handlers. So I was only there for about 12 months. That's a fabulous experience. But then I then realised that I wanted to run businesses for other people, which was great, and I had a great time. I've learned a few tips, and I was this happens. I was about 34, 35 at the time, I suppose. And this happens to a lot of us, I think. We think, you know what, I've made money for other people. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it for myself now. And we have this sort of thing we call the entrepreneurial seizure. We go, right, that's it. Off we go. So we jumped in. We had a couple of partners, jumped in, and we had a transport warehousing business. And we built a recruitment business on the side of it as well to sort of support all this sort of thing. And we did that for about 4 or 5 years. And what I realized was that the business was fine. It was good. I didn't actually enjoy it. It was one of those things, long hours. Anybody in the transport logistics business knows it's it's a rough, tough business. It's not a pleasant business all the time to be in. So we worked really hard, made a bit of cash out of it. And then we got to a point where we want to move on and do something else. So we flipped and we sold out and went and did our own thing. That's when we started our training coaching business, which was back in 2002. But starting your own business in transport, warehouses and trucks, that sort of thing, it was great. A great bunch of people. We did well. We got all the sales and the commercial side of it sorted out, but it got to be very, very tight margin, all price sensitivity, loads of competition out there, difficult to differentiate. And we were based in the back end of Birmingham in Witton, in the shadow of the Aston Villa football ground. So it was, going there every day. The traffic was horrific, and I wasn't living the dream, put it that way. So we decided to go and do something else.
So what made you decide to start a business in the logistics industry then, if it was perhaps something that you wasn't your dream role, or your dream industry to be in?
It's a great point. And I think what happened was the dream of owning our own company overtook the dream of what to do with it. So that's sort of the business ownership, having freedom and independence and all this sort of thing, which was all very, very attractive. And I just thought, that's it. We'll do that, and the business will be fine. For the first couple of years, that was the case. I just loved it, being your own boss. You do your own thing, make your own decisions. But then you get to a point where the business is stable and secure. Then you realize you want to actually enjoy the day-to-day activities as well. So I think it was the dream of ownership was the attraction, which we did. But then, the novelty wore off a little bit after a couple of years after that as well. So so be careful. For people watching this, be careful. Choose ownership, but also choose a business sector you love as well. That would be a good tip, I think.
Yeah, it's a really, really good piece of advice, actually, and one that I've heard time and time again. Do something that you love, because otherwise, you get to that point where the novelty wears off and you go, actually, this is a grind that I don't want to continue with. Yeah,
absolutely.
So did you have a conversation with yourself and your wife and kind of say, right, next step, coaching, or how did that come about?
Well, that was strange, because back then we had a thing called a fax machine in the office, and I was in the office in Birmingham, in Witton. Sat there working away or traveling around, and the fax went, and a fax came through, and it said, "Dear Mr. Holland, blah blah blah. We've heard that you may be interested in business acquisition or something like that." And it was a franchise sales guy had sent these notes through. And what had happened was, literally about 2 weeks before we received this fax, sat down with Lynn and we did this sort of, what do we want? We knew what we didn't want. We didn't want all these crazy hours and things like that. What do we want to do? How's life going to look? We got 2 boys and this sort of thing. And life was good, we were okay. But we wrote down, we want to, have a business we enjoy, working with people we like and trust. Travel, international travel would be great. We want to live in France. We want to do all these sort of things. And we wrote this sort of little checklist down, having no idea how we're going to do it. And when this fax came through, it literally said, as a business coach, you will be working with people you like, you'll be, oh, this is crikey. All the things we'd written down 2 weeks before almost came through on this fax. And I thought, this is crazy. This is like too good to be true. Where's the catch? So I phoned Lynn and said, I had this fax come through, and sat down over dinner that night and said, well, let's have a look at it. So I went to meet with these guys, and back then it was a company called Action International was the franchise. Met with them. They were sort of entering into the UK looking for business coaches. I had no idea what a business coach was. They didn't exist back then, but how they described it was, that's it. You know, working with professionals, working your own schedule, and it's improvement, it's positivity, all this sort of thing. So I signed up, bought a franchise, and that was end of 2002. So we fell into it. We fell into, I had no idea what coaching was. Back then, I mean, people, you see, you go to a BNI group when you're back in 2002, and you say, I'm a business coach, and they go, really, what's that? That sounds very interesting. You go there now, and they go, oh, another one. So it's slightly different now. I get it, it has changed a little bit. But back then, it was a novelty. Nobody was doing it. It was very new, very innovative, very creative. So we were sort of establishing the niche, I suppose, or helping to establish the niche in the UK. And we fell into it. We loved it. We've worked with some great people, and hence we're still doing it in principle. But no, that's right. So a fax, and we sort of fell into it. There's a pattern here of me falling into sort of happy trenches as I go along. So it wasn't planned particularly, but it did work out okay in the end.
Yeah, but I guess you must have done some research on the company before paying the license fee. So what kind of process did you go through to kind of validate that this was going to be a good decision for you?
It was if you're buying a franchise, you go through a period of what we call due diligence, when you do all the digging around, look at the numbers and the finance and the structure. I spoke to other franchisees that were already established, find out what they were doing, and just checked out, go onto the internet. But the internet wasn't quite as clever back then as it is now. But you can do a search, if you find there's an organization or a person you want to check out, just Google them, put on there something is, and see what turns up. You'll find out what's going on. So we did quite an amount of research. The challenge we faced was there weren't many people in the UK already doing it. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, because the franchisees I was speaking with were maybe over in the US or in Australia, which is fine. But of course, because it works in America or because it works in Australia, it doesn't always mean it's going to translate straight into the UK British market. So it was a bit of a risk, but well, everything is, it was one of those things. But my pattern and my sort of style is, well, if I can get to be, 2/3 happy with something, I'll jump in, I'll figure the rest out, which is probably where we got to. We were 2/3 happy, and we jumped in and off we went. And it worked out okay. I mean, it was tough to start off. Any business is tough when you start it, but we figured it out, and we had some great clients. We've got clients with us now who were there with us back then, or in our network back then as well. So no, it's been a journey, this one so far.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. So did you have a business plan before you entered into the business itself, or was that kind of ad hoc?
I'm hesitating here. I'm going to say the official, as a professional business coach, of course, cash flow, business plan, P&L, that sort of thing. Not really. I think that most people don't. I jumped in with an idea. We knew what the numbers looked like and that sort of thing. But because we're doing this thing from scratch almost, even though it was within a franchise environment, it was pretty much get out there and have a go and see what works. Go to BNI in the mornings and all this sort of thing, find out how it works and what happens. So there was no real plan. It became a plan. When we figured out what to do, we knew what to not do and what we should be doing, so the plan evolved. But to start off with, no, not really. It was just a case of, have a go, apply our best efforts to everything, and see what happened, which maybe is not the answer many people want to hear. But I think, genuinely, I think most people, when they go into business, a lot of entrepreneurs, the only reason you do a business plan is to get some money from the bank, and then you put it on the shelf and it gathers dust. So plan, yes, but follow your instinct as well, I think, because that's probably the key thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to run through that business plan so you can kind of see what it might look like, right? But the reality is, it's never that simple.
It never shows up. Right.
Year one turnover just magically will be this number, and 2 and 3, and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, never seen that work. So yeah, I mean, plan, structure, budgets, numbers. We knew the numbers. But really it was, it was entrepreneurial, jump in, see what works and figure it out.
Yeah, it's kind of just do it, isn't it? Take action, and then things will happen. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's still brave to do that. So I admire you for that. And I know that's what a lot of people listening to this will be thinking is, yeah, but I want to make sure I'm going to be successful. Well, unfortunately, there's no guarantee. You've just got to take action.
If you want certainty, I think there's a myth, I think, as well, that people, they look for certainty, so they stay in a job. Well, jobs are not certain anymore anyway. They never were, not really. They can be taken away. I think the danger is people get used to the regular paycheck coming through, whether you like it or not, whether you're happy with it, but at least there's a regular amount coming through. And when you start your own business, that regularity stops. And that's the scary part. And that's what puts most people off. But again, for me, and I see other people as well, is if you really want to do it, do your plans, understand your numbers. I mean, I'm not saying just go and text your boss and get on with it next week, but you've got to have that passion and drive to get out there and make it happen. It's a force of will. Best budget in the world. If you're not out there at 6 a.m, shaking the tree, nothing's going to come in. So you've got to really work hard, fall over a few times. It's going to be tough. We've lived on value baked beans for a couple of months, all that sort of thing, and crack on with it. But don't look for certainty, because you're not going to get it in your own business. Certainly not in the early stages. You can get a bit of certainty, more certainty as you go along, because you can then predict where the next income is going to come from, or growth. You've got control over it more so than in a job. But the early stages can be pretty scary for people. That's what puts them off, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So it worked out for you though, and
so far,
yeah. and after 5 years, what happened with your Action International, did you say, or Action Coach now, aren't they? So
it was Action International, then Action Coach now. So I think the name changed about 2 or 3 years into our franchise agreement. So we got to the end of the 5 years, and we did well. We won, I think, one of the top franchisees, this sort of thing. I wasn't going to renew, only because I wanted to go and do my own thing, and more international and more national work, this type of thing, because we built this sort of reputation. So we weren't going to renew our franchise, and as we weren't going to renew, we literally had the opportunity then to go to the US, and it was working alongside the franchisor based out of Las Vegas. And my role there was not as a franchisee, but there was then to go and work with the franchisor and deliver the training and refine the training, the coach support mechanisms. So we were based over, I mean, the whole family moved over there, went over to Las Vegas, Nevada, which we go from Shropshire to Nevada. That was a seamless transition. So we're based in Nevada, which was insane in a good way. It was great. And then after a couple of 3 years there, the franchise needed somebody to be based out of Luxembourg, because they needed what we call an office over here, which needed substance, which is a person, that sort of thing. And because the office was full of Americans and Australians, I think I was the only one that didn't need a work visa to come back to Europe. So, and we wanted to come back to Europe anyway. Anybody who's been to Las Vegas, it's fabulous for a 3-day weekend. It's great. But when you've been there for a couple of years, the novelty sort of was. So we wanted to come back to civilization. So we came back over here with them for about another 12 months, hence Luxembourg and living in France, and got that all established. And then we sort of drifted off and rebuilt our own business then in France, with office in Luxembourg as well. So that's how we ended up in France. But Action Coach were very good to us. We had a long time with them. They were great. But I don't sort of fit well in somebody else's structure, if that makes sense. I'm more an independent, free spirit. I don't like being told what to do, which is not great from a franchisee perspective. So I recognize that we're better doing our own thing. But they were great, a good bunch. They're doing very well now. They're good. I know a number of people still in the franchise. Good bunch, and we thank them for the opportunities they gave us. So we were with them for nearly 8 years, I think it was, in all different sort of roles. But that's how we ended up in France and Luxembourg.
Cool. So your time in Nevada, in Vegas, then. I imagine doing business over there is completely different to anywhere in the world, or at least that's what movies lead me to believe. It's much more kind of handshakes and cowboy hats or something like that,
It's different. It is different different culture, not in a bad way or a good way, just different. They're much, what I found with the Americans, but certainly the West Coast, Southwest America, it's the Wild West frontier. It is. They're still, developing, and much more compared to, to Shropshire in the UK, full of cows and sheep, much more ambitious, much more of a can-do, let's go, let's make it happen attitude, and let's figure it out, and off they go. And this sort of the whole Silicon Valley effect, if you like, that is over there. There was a definite difference there, yeah, and that sort of positivity, let's get on with it, and high five and stuff like that, which we smile, it makes us smile over here, but actually you can see how and why they've got that spirit that drives things forwards. It was a great experience working alongside the guys over there. And I think it was rubbed off to a certain extent. I hope it did. But I thought I fitted in reasonably well. The other side of it, of course, is the whole, I'm not going to have this as a subject, I'm sure, for now, but this sort of the gun culture over there, which coming from the Shropshire to the Wild West of Nevada, it's like, crikey, that was a bit of a shock, actually, a surprise.
Yeah.
You get prepared for it, but that was a big difference. And I make no commentary on it, good or bad, different certainly. So that took a bit of getting used to. But no, but the spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit over there, yeah, fantastic, really, really great experience.
Cool. Sounds good. It sounds interesting anyway. Well, like you say, good or bad, it sounds interesting.
It was the best fun in the world because, literally the weekend, you say, well, okay, the weekend's here. Where do we go? Should we go to the Bellagio or the Venetian or the Wynn? And it sounds insane to say this, but we almost got, not bored, but you can only go to so many steakhouses and champagne bars. And, and it's ridiculous, but we ran out of nice, normal things to go, because if you go to the Bellagio every Saturday, one, you end up gaining about 5 kilos every weekend. It is quite pricey, but it becomes a bit samey, which sounds ridiculous,
sensory overload maybe as well. And yeah,
it was too much of a good thing. Too much of a good thing. So we loved it. It was great. But, we live now in a little tiny village. You can hear the church bell going by in the background. Little tiny village in the middle of rural France now, which again is polar opposites. But we sit more comfortably here. We just do. This is more us. It's not just European, but rural. We've got chickens in the garden. We've got rabbits, and the dogs are here, and it's just a different lifestyle completely. So we're more comfortable here now.
Excellent. And I want to come on to your current business in a moment, but before we do, I just wanted to ask if your experience franchisor side.
Yeah.
What did you learn anything particular from that? Did it open your eyes to anything? Because obviously it's two sides of the business, really, isn't it? You've worked on, so both franchisee or franchise partner, and then franchisor. So I imagine they're fairly different in the kind of experiences you had of what franchising actually is. So I want to tap into that and find out, what you learned, or what do you think are the key differences and challenges you faced?
I think that, well, first of all, it was literally poacher turned gamekeeper, because I've been a franchisee, you're on the sort of receiving end of everything. As a franchisor, you're at the top end of the pipe and you're managing and everything like that. I think the key thing that I know they learned from a franchisor head on was that the reason that franchisees have different levels of success is not the level of quality of the system or the structure or the training, it's how they apply it. And as a franchisee, because as a franchisee, if it goes wrong, you blame the system. Of course, this doesn't work. This doesn't work in the UK. It might work in Australia, but it doesn't work over here, and all this, whatever goes on. But when you're a franchisor, you change that. And I learned this real quick, that when I looked at franchisees that were doing really well, and most of them were, they were using the system, they were attending training, going to conference, asking questions. They were using the system, if you like. Those that weren't doing very well, for whatever reason, you look at it and you do this audit on them. Show me your numbers, show me your system, show me your plan, all this sort of thing. They weren't doing it. And that was a learning for me, that actually the power of the franchise is the model and the system and the structure, that not anybody can do it. But if you follow that system, it'll work. Now, even if you follow the system to the nth degree, different people get different outcomes from it. You just do. But the band narrows between top level and mid level, if you like. It narrows so much. Whereas if you don't follow the system, you do your own thing and make it up as you go along and hope for the best and blame the templates, well, then it almost sort of crashed and burned. So that was a big thing. It is follow the system, which I have to say I didn't learn that very well as a franchisee. But anyway, I tended to create some stuff as well. But that was one of the key things. And the other thing I think is that it's how to bring people into a franchise. A relationship is different because we're looking after people, but they're not employees. We are renting them our intellectual property, allowing them to use our knowledge, our tools and templates, and our brand and our logo. And we have to really take care of how they do that. So keeping the franchisee on track and in between the lines, really, really important. It can affect your brand in a dramatic way. If you get a bad franchisee, if you like, can really affect the brand. So I think that was, follow the system was key, but also make sure people are the right type before you bring them in and keep them on track, keep them engaged as well.
It's quite interesting what you said there about follow the system, because I hear it all the time from franchisors. Franchisees just need to follow the system. Exactly. But the way you described it there, it made me think as somebody who's potentially looking to buy a franchise, sensible thing to do when going through that validation piece, you mentioned it earlier, going and speaking to existing franchisees, is to find out what they think is wrong with the system maybe. And you'll kind of get some insights there, more so than speaking to the people that aren't successful and, finding out what they think is wrong with it. So maybe it's just a different tack that people could take in sort of investigating the franchise rather than just going, how are you finding it, actually?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, because if you say, how are you finding it? See, franchisees will tend to say nice things about the franchisor because they've still got a contract with them for a start-off, and they don't want to be. They'll be sensitive to these sort of things most of the time. But if you're looking anybody looking to buy a franchise, speak to the franchisees. Absolutely, don't just speak to the ones that they give you. Will be my tip. They're going to give you a list. Here's 5 franchisees you can speak to. That's great. Well, I'm not saying they're going to cherry pick, but go online, find a franchisee in with their brand, and pick up the phone. How you doing? I'm looking to buy a franchise, blah, blah, blah. You've got 10 minutes, have a chat. Not to try and dig the dirt, but just find out what it's really like off record, if you like. When it comes to the system, though, it's a great big point you make. Everybody says a franchise or follow the system. Is be really clear what that system is. Show me the system. What is it? Is it just an idea? Is it a flow chart? Is it what is this system? Because if it's not clear and concise and can be easily demonstrated, well, how can you follow it if it's not clear? So the system for any franchise, a franchise is just a system anyway, should be really clear, really specific. It should be easy to use, easy to understand, and have key timelines, all that sort of thing in it. But check out the system. All you're buying is access to a system. So set the franchise up, show me the system, and then speak to franchisees. Show me the system that you use. If they're different, then there's a problem. Because the franchisee should say, here's my system. I do this, this, and this, the same as a franchisor does. If they don't, and they've had to be creative with it, and they've done their own innovations and this sort of thing, well, then question mark, maybe not question mark the franchise, but question mark the franchisee. But yeah, show me the system is a great question to ask as a due diligence question. Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of the times people sort of lean too heavily on the, is it a good brand and, have they got a good presence in the market? But actually, I've seen quite a few franchises who I've never heard of, but they seem to be very successful, behind the scenes. It's good to have that brand there, but it's not always the thing to rely on. Like you say, it's the system. And to be honest with you, I think it's just to go one step further. What are the people like that are helping you to operate that system? So what do the staff team look like? If they're running on a skeleton kind of crew where there's only 1 or 2 people and they're doing 10 things each. It depends how good how much you believe in the individual who's doing those 10 jobs, but it might be a good idea just to make sure they've got enough resources to be able to support the number of franchisees they have within the franchise network. So it's a good point. But all this experience, I guess it's given you a nice rounded view on business ownership and supporting.
That's why I'm so grey. That's all it is. I wasn't great when I did all this one.
I think that's just your age, mate. Sorry.
I'm only 33 now, for goodness sake.
But yeah, that's given you a really nice rounded view from kind of all aspects, from the early days looking into businesses and trying to spot kind of efficiencies, to actually running and starting your own businesses, to then supporting other people to do those. And I guess that's then led on to what you're doing today, really, in your business's results rules okay. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, and and I guess how and why you started it?
Well, we wanted to run our own business, and we sat down. We had a house in Metz, which is a city in the middle of France, about half an hour south of here. And we sat and said, okay, we want to do our own thing again. Have a great time with the franchise, all good, great people. We want to go and move on to our own thing. What should we do? And we thought, well, we could run a bar, we could buy a campsite, and all these ridiculous ideas. Just buy a campsite and go down the south of France and do this sort of thing. Anyway, we got that took about 2 weeks, got it out of our system. And then Lynn said, well, what are you good at? What are you good at? What do you enjoy? I said, well, I actually enjoy working with other entrepreneurs and business people, and I like being on stage and this sort of thing. She said, well, why don't we, create, and we called it the business co-pilot, rather than there's coaching, there's consulting and training, we'll blend it all together. And why don't we put a product together, a program that you sit alongside entrepreneurs, business people, and you help them build their business, which is what you did throughout your career anyway. Why don't you do that? So we thought, well, okay, well, what should we call it? And we're driving through Metz, and somebody had put some graffiti on a bridge. And anybody who knows Metz, it's sort of an industrial, semi-industrial city. It's very pretty in the center, but the outlying area is not particularly great. And it's only put on a bridge. They'd sprayed onto it. Metz rules okay. And I thought, flipping it, there's a leap of faith, Metz rules okay. So we hung onto the rules okay thing, literally with a sort of spray paint. I mean, what's the reason for the business existing? Well, it's because we want to get people results. So we just sort of tied it together. And that's where the name came from. We bought the URL and went into Luxembourg, did a bit of networking, built websites, and off we went. So now my role now is to work alongside business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, fundamentally doing what I did when we were, running with the logistics company, helping them grow, looking at their business with a fresh pair of eyes, asking some stupid questions, nudging them along if I need to keep the pace up a little bit. And we've got clients in 34 countries now, not at the same time, but overall, because it's all done via Zoom and the brave new world. So we've got a full range of clients. They're all a very good bunch. But it goes back to that fax, I think, that we received back in the day. We're working with people we like. We travel the world. We're living in France. We enjoy what we do. The income is where we want it to be. The balance is all there. So if you go all the way back to when we wanted to get rid of our transport company, that list we wrote down over dinner, it's now showed up, and then the living in France was a key goal for us as well. And it's now come to be, or it's manifested itself, you would say, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. And why a business co-pilot rather than a business coach?
Only because I think if you put the business coach, everybody rolls their eyes and go, oh, another one, a life coach, a business coach, or a skills coach, or a sales coach. I think the word coach has been overused, overdone, and there's no differentiation there. There's some great people out there doing great work in business coaching world. What I found is that of all the things that I do, coaching is one of them. I have a coaching approach with my clients. Do we do a bit of consulting? Do we do some training? We do a bit of psychology? Do we do a bit of tea and sympathy or whatever it is? Yeah, but it's broader than, I say, just coaching. So I changed the term to a bit of differentiation. But it is a co-pilot. We sit next to my clients. They tell me everything about their business, their numbers, their fears, their hates, and whatever it is. And we work in the long term. We've had clients been with us now for, actively 10 years over here now. And the business evolves and grows. We see them through births and marriages and relationships, all this sort of thing. And I become a part of their team. I like to be a part of their team, which adds value to what they do. And I continue to support them for as long as there's value. So the co-pilot was chosen as not to get away from coaching, but a bit of a differentiator, because you can try, anybody listening to this, so if they're a coach, and congratulations, but you try, tell people you're a business coach and see what happens. It's like, get me out of here quick. Where's the exit? Goodness me, another one. Whereas when it's co-pilot, at least it's, it sounds a bit different, and it is different, to be fair. So we changed direction a bit.
Yeah, I think coaches, consultants, it does have a bit of a bad name, but actually, I think it kind of hides what's actually going on underneath the hood, so to speak.
Yeah,
Because each coach has got a different approach, technique that they bring to the
absolutely.
table than the next, and the same with consultants as well. So I can understand why. I still think there's room in the place for business coaches. Certainly, I think
Sure.
it takes the right client, obviously, to
Yeah.
have that mentality of growth to engage. But yeah, I think there's room in the marketplace for both terminology. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's interesting the way you've kind of differentiated just yourself there. One question I wanted to ask you is, obviously your first experience of starting a business. Okay, it sounded like it was pretty successful, but then kind of got to the point where you weren't so happy with it. I wondered if your experience within franchising has kind of helped and guided your current business that you're growing and building.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing that I learned, if you like, is having a system, a method, a framework that it can be repeated and can be used again. Because rather than reinvent the wheel every time, every program for a client or every bit of marketing we do, we have a method now to it where it's repeatable. So it's funny, we had a new client starting in July, which is 2 days away. And I said to Lynn this morning, I said, "Oh, remember, we've got Lee is starting in July. So it's already done, all sorted." And I've seen the email thread because the email templates are all built. We have a certain timeline. Lynn does this, I do that, we do this next, we do that, and it's all done. And I don't have to think about it. Lynn does it automatically. The system's all there. So systems were the key. So I think, and this is for any business, not just a coaching, consulting, co-pilot business. And I see this with my clients as well, that too many of them, when we first start, don't have systems. Well, they think they have a system, but it's in their head. And they've experienced their knowledge, their passion, their background. They're geniuses at what they do. But when they give it to Helen or Bob to do it, it all falls around their ears because there's no system in place. There's no structure. There's no video. There's no lists or anything like that, or checklists. So systemizing was a big lesson for me, even coming from the military manufacturing background. Everything's a system there, but flipping it into a business context, it gives you leverage, it gives you durability, it gives you scalability as well. You can't, in my experience, scale a business if it's built on no systems, because every day is new, and you don't want that. So systems was a big learning for me, and that's what we apply, for our own businesses. We have a language training business in Luxembourg as well now. And so those of our clients, I'm not a systems specialist, but show me a system. Where's this? How does this happen? What happens here? And it's a good discipline to have in any sector, pretty much.
Yeah, interesting. And so, what does the future look like for Results Real? Okay, is it one of growth, or is it kind of stabilizing and getting things sort of settled for the long term? Maybe buy out further on down the line. I mean, yeah, don't give me all your business secrets, but
No.
what's the future look like?
No, I think we're growing, because it's part of the game of business, I think, is to grow and develop and build. So we're building new products, new services. We're aligning ourselves with other coaches. Now, whether we go down the franchise route or the licensing route, that's still, we're exploring franchising right now, where we can franchise the co-pilot methodology, if you like, because that gives us leverage and gives us scope as well. So I think we'll go down the route of building a team, a leveraged team. I'll say a franchise. It might be licensing, whatever it is, but that type of model. I don't see myself or the company taking on a huge amount of employees, not because I have anything against employees, but I like the independence and freedom of that different relationship. So I think we'll go down that route. So we've got a couple of coaches out there, working alongside us now, proving the models and systems out there to get all the things that are in my head onto a system and structure. So that'll be the next thing. But we run our business 3 days a week. We only do 3 days now. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the business days, and the other days are maybe traveling or maybe doing some workshops, that sort of thing, or doing this renovation cottage that you've spotted on LinkedIn, the updates. Very busy doing that. So we wanted to build into a lifestyle business, but not a side hustle. It's a proper business. It has to make the money, make profits. It has to achieve growth and scalability whilst allowing us to have the lifestyle that we want in the middle of rural France, in the middle of nowhere. So in answer to your question, yeah, growth. I'll say franchising is the next stage for us, probably developing the beta test this year, launch next year, and more travel, more workshops, and getting back on stage again after the COVID's all gone away, thank goodness.
Fantastic. Well, maybe we'll see results for OK in the UK soon then.
We are back in September. No, it's not a pitch, but it's interesting because with the restrictions easing off a little bit now, we can get back on stage doing live events. We've booked a gig for one of our own workshops in September. So I'll ping you a separate note. I'm not going to plug it on here for you. But yeah, so we're back on stage, which is great, getting back in, because during lockdown, we're now grandparents as well. So our youngest son, Richard, in the UK, he's a dad. We haven't seen the grandchild yet. So I want to get to the UK to see the grandson and do a workshop at the same time, so we can charge the travel to the business and all that sort of thing. But anyway, there we go.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like your business is going to allow you to do that. So I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up. And
yeah, of course.
These are ones that I ask everybody. And I'd love to find a funny or strange or weird story that maybe you've had throughout your whole career, whether that's in franchising or otherwise. Yeah. What good stories have you got?
My goodness, the ones I can tell. Okay, so I had a client in the UK. I was referred to a client in the UK, and everybody goes networking, we'll all recognise this. So doing the BNI round, a referral come through from a lady who was with Orange Telephones, and he was to go and speak to this guy who owned a drinks distribution company in Birmingham, and went to see him, lovely guy, and a big distribution company. So we've also got another business down the road in the middle of Birmingham. Could you go and speak to them as well? Which is like, wow, this is great. Got an internal referral, straight away, which is great. So I went down there to meet them, and it turns out this was one of the biggest gay nightclubs in Europe, apparently. So I went in there, and a great bunch of people, and they said, "Look, can I help them?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's a business, so all the experience I've got, I'll apply it to this business." They did the deal, went down. We had to do a team presentation on the first session of the plans and the goals. Anyway, went down there to meet them all, and then to open the nightclub, and they're all in their outfits, stage outfits, the door outfits, and the dancers were there, and it was a very, very unusual presentation in the positive sense of the word, but that was the sort of the slightly unusual. But they were just fantastic people. We actually rented the whole nightclub out for our 21st anniversary, and we had the dancers, we had the guys with the snakes and all this sort of thing in there as well. But we didn't tell our guests it was a gay nightclub, so that was the funniest thing in the world. But so that was the most fun. I've had a fun client. They were brilliant people. With them for about 3 or 4 years. And still in touch with them now, but that was the most fun one, I suppose.
So they were there all dressed up while you were presenting?
Yeah, I was doing a business presentation, and they were ready to go on stage and do. And of course, they're dressed in quite flamboyant costumes, let's say, yeah. And it was just spectacular. You got all the makeup and the dresses and the suits, and it was very, very cool, but slightly unusual, put it that way, in a positive way. But it was fantastic. That was probably a very fun engagement. That was good fun, good stuff.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool, right? That's kind of what business is, isn't it, in the real world? Absolutely. Not this kind of stuffy sort of handshaking and always in suits all the time for most businesses. It's caught in the corporate world, sure, but actually there's a lot of fun to be had with other businesses as well. So
it was a fun business. It was genuinely, and they, the genuinely good people. They were working really hard. Had a fabulous product. The product was excellent. They had the best, DJs. And I was sort of, I'd grown out of the DJ club scene when I was doing this, but they knew exactly how to get a good crowd. They knew exactly how to play the crowd, and Lynn and I would go down there just because it's a fun place to go. One of the things I never realised, and this is something I twigged as I was working with them, is that a lot of straight girls go to gay nightclubs, and I can never figure it out. But of course, they get left alone. Or sometimes they get left alone, and it's like, no, I understand now. That's why. It's a little penny drop for me, if you like. But they had a very good product. They had great fun, and they were good people. It was a good business as well. And so that was the most flamboyant probably client I think I ever worked. We're still in touch with them now on Facebook. I see what they're up to and that sort of thing. They're a good bunch. That was really cool. That was quite unusual. Good fun. Good.
That's cool. And but a final question then I wanted to ask is, Obviously, with your experience in franchising from both sides, I wondered what advice you'd give to anybody who's perhaps listening to this and thinking, I'm looking to buy a franchise or set up a business under a different franchise brand. What would be your one piece of advice that you give to them?
I would make sure that you love or like the work that they do. So if it's a drain cleaning franchise, make sure you're okay with drain cleaning. If it's a coaching franchise, make sure you're okay with working with people and coaching them. Don't get swayed as I did with business ownership. And I think too many people buy a franchise to get away from a job they don't like, or to get a role if they can't get a job if they're being made redundant, and they grab at almost anything if not very careful. So don't do that. There's loads of franchises out there. Choose the business of the franchise first, I think, and then the system of the franchise and the brand and everything goes with it second. But make sure you like what the job's going to entail. If it's a car polishing, cleaning franchise, fantastic, providing you like messing with cars and being around car people. So I'd be really clear on what it is you enjoy and want to be associated with, and then choose your franchise afterwards. Don't just go and look for any franchise. Choose the sector first, I think.
I guess like you did previously in your career, write down that list, right? Your values, what you want to achieve. Because I mean, even if it is a drain cleaning franchise and you've got a management license, maybe you can get something out of it without having to clear the drains yourself anyway. So
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Dave.
So I think that's it. So choose carefully, I think, is the trick.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Perfect. Dave, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome to speak to you and to get to know you a bit better. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you as well. And thank you for putting up with me for what seems like about 3 or 4 hours, but my pleasure. Good to see you.
It didn't seem that long to me. It's been great. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.